Three. Welcome to the 5 a.m. podcast. I'm your host, Michael Klassen. Today, we're joined by a remarkable entrepreneur who's redefining what it means to build a business on your own terms. Sasha Eburne is a business coach who mentors ambitious women worldwide to step into their CEO era while creating what she calls first-class freedom. Sasha brings over 20 years of business management experience from the corporate world, followed by building her own highly successful virtual assistant business. Now, what makes her story particularly fascinating is how she defied conventional wisdom, going from one client to fully booked in just 3 weeks, and then building a national team of 15 within 6 months, all while prioritizing her life as a solo mom. Based in Australia's beautiful Gold Coast, Sasha is a certified NLP master coach, breath and sound coach, and therapeutic hypnotherapist who combines mindset work with strategic business development. She's also the host of The Sasha Eburne Show, where she shares unfiltered conversations about building impactful businesses without the chaos. Sasha, it's a pleasure to have you on the 5 a.m. podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Yes, I'm looking forward to this conversation. Now, before we get started, I wanted to ask, can you talk about how the coaching work that you've done maybe helped you in your own business, or is this like a chicken and the egg? Which came first?
So I became the coach first,
Okay.
and I didn't know what a coach was when I started. I just wanted to share the opportunity that I had built a bit of a flexible business, more income than my 9 to 5. And I was just like, well, I just want to share that with other women. So I started just teaching them how to start a business.
Hmm.
And then I had hit a ceiling in my business in terms of revenue. And that's when I engaged in my business coach to support me to grow to that next level and realize that actually this is a whole nother industry of actually helping and impacting people around the world.
Right. And so for people who might be listening, I too know that feeling of you kind of feel like you've topped out in your business. Um, Do you have some words of advice on maybe is it a pivot that's needed? Is it education or coaching that's needed? But somebody's listening and maybe they see the writing on the wall and they say, "Wait a second, are they talking about me? Am I get because I'm kind of feeling like I've reached my maximum earning potential in my current state."
Yeah, so definitely don't think it's could be pivoting, but everybody's business is unique to them. So generally,
Mm,
I always say it's about not being able to see where the gaps are in our business, and that
mm,
generally comes from working with somebody that has already walked the path. So a lot of times when I'm choosing a business mentor, it's somebody that has a business similar to mine, that's maybe 6 to 12 months ahead of where I am, sometimes even more, so that they can help me find the roadblocks, find the gaps in my business that I'm not seeing, so that I can grow. And generally, it is actually doing things in a very different way because we're so ingrained from our 9 to 5 to be like, well, the only way to make more money is to work harder, to
yes.
work more, or to cut expenses rather than, grow profit or, find other ways that we can bring in revenue. So it's about how can we look at business a little bit differently? And that's generally the education piece. Because when we all start business, let's be honest, most of us didn't learn business in school. It's something that we've had to learn as we go. So if we can work with somebody that is a business expert, then we can add that to the services that we're already providing. Most of us start a business knowing the services that we're going to offer because we can do that already. It's then pairing it with the education around how to run a successful
Mhm.
business, I find is key for actually moving forward when you hit that ceiling.
Yes. And I like that we're starting to talk about that mentorship and finding because it's true we don't know what we don't know. And just before Christmas we had a guest on, William Gray. His entire career almost has been mentorship. He taught it in university. He took his university students through mentoring, worked for major companies like Kodak Eastman and Shell and other companies like that. And that whole world is fascinating about mentorship. And then part of my production career, I've had to work with political types. So politicians, policymakers, some real boring stuff and some real exciting stuff. But I was thinking today of a retired gentleman who spent his life in Canadian politics. And one of the things that he had said to me a couple of years ago is that he loved to read autobiographies through his career. And he said, Michael, I would get stumped with a problem. And he said, I would go back in my office and I would look through my autobiographical books or biography books, and I would find now, what did, let's say, Marcus Aurelius, or what did, I don't know, some actor or some sort of military or political figure from the past, how did they deal with what I'm going through? Because humans are all the
Mm.
same. And so that was his mentoring, which I thought was very innovative for his time, of finding books of famous people like Winston Churchill or others who had gone through certain things to say, oh, that's how they cracked that nut that I'm having trouble with. So I want to ask you about the different types of coaching that I mentioned in the intro. So NLP, of course, neuro linguistic programming. Can you talk a little bit about how did you get into that type of coaching, and what is the value that that brings to the relationship?
So I kind of stumbled across it by accident.
Okay.
A past colleague, you'd say, in the hotel industry, started working for this company that was a coaching company, and she was their marketing director. So I knew her personally, and she started working there, and she said, you should come along to these networking events. And I came along to the networking events, and it was the first time that I'd engaged in a coach, and I thought it was business coaching. That's what I thought it was.
Hmm.
And I had no idea what was I stepping into, how my life was going to change. So it wasn't business coaching, although there was elements of how it can be mapped across and support your business, but essentially it was the NLP practitioner program. And it was 7 days, completely intense in the room, 12 to 16-hour days. And not only did it change my life in terms of how I hold myself to a higher standard, how I carry myself through life. It's really how can I support the women that I'm coaching to actually make the change? Because a
Hmm.
lot of us jump into entrepreneurship and then we have all of these limiting beliefs, these past conditionings that hold us back. There's the imposter syndrome, I'm not good enough, the shiny, anything that kind of keeps us safe in that comfort zone, because business
Hmm.
is can be uncomfortable. So now that I've got the training and the resources behind me, so not only have I been through that transformation, I can support my clients when everything's like, actually, this is just too hard. I'm going to go back to my 9 to 5. I can support them to find out what the root causes of that so that we
Hmm.
can unpack it and work through it to keep them moving, because they know that this is actually a better life for them. But it's about how can we work through those roadblocks to keep them
Yes.
moving.
Yeah, that I love that description that you give, and there's so many metaphors from life to business, whether it's sailing or thinking back to historical figures, or I guess pick your metaphor, really. And what I find interesting is how the coaching course actually impacted and changed you in all of this. So then you had a transformation story to bring to your clients. And really, that's what we're looking for. And I mentioned the boat, the sailing metaphor, in that the safe harbor. We can have our boat in this safe harbor. And absolutely, do we want to go over to Malta? Yes, we do. We'd love to go St. Paul's Bay. But man, those waves look awfully big. And it's kind of like that 9 to 5 thing, or somebody that's in debt. And, if I just keep working, it's safe. I know where my office is. I've got my warm blankie and my pillow and at my desk and workstation, and I can just keep paying this stuff. And somebody like yourself will say, hold on a second, you're made for so much more
Hmm.
than that. And so does the breath and sound coaching that you've done, does that fit with NLP, or is that a different mode altogether?
It fits with it, but it's still a different modality altogether. And what that really all is about is nervous system regulation. So, whilst we
Hmm.
have a lot with NLP in terms of the mind and rewiring our unconscious, in
Yeah.
terms of our vessel, our human,
Yes.
what I learned through breathwork is as humans, we actually do not breathe the way that our body was designed to breathe, and
Huh.
how introducing breath into our day to day lives can actually just allow us to come from more and more calm and peace place, because we're we're regulating what's happening in our body. So if you talk about
Mm.
stress and society norms and kids and just life, you go and introduce a breathwork practice, you can really bring down your cortisol levels quite significantly.
Wow.
A lot of people have, determined, diseases to be reduced as well. And in terms of sound, they say actually reaches the parts of the unconscious that words cannot. So the sound waves go that little bit deeper that,
Mm.
say, hypnosis or meditation can't actually reach. So it goes much deeper in terms of nervous system regulation.
Yes. Wow. And there's like we're just scratching the very tip of an iceberg. I totally get it.
Totally.
But I love that we can talk about knowing how to breathe as I took that breath there for a second as I was thinking. And in relationships, as you do, you don't mean to sigh, but you get this breath that sounds like a sigh. And someone's gonna say, "What was that for?"
Yeah.
I don't know. I was just breathing.
Just breathing.
And it's because we're not actually, they tell us in school or, as we're growing up, oh, it's automatic. You don't have to think about breathing. I think we probably should think about breathing. And then, of course, the sound waves. And, coming from a Christian perspective, and you're talking about sound waves, so that frequency. And the Bible talks about faith comes by hearing, but that's for everybody. We believe what we hear. We try to believe what we see, and so these frequencies, we could even get into maybe color of clothing and types of clothing, because all of that is that frequency. And there's so much more I know to the colors even of clothes that we wear that impacts us. But I don't want to derail us too much. I would love, could you just give us like a snapshot of why we should consider the importance of breath work and how to breathe?
So, like you said, that we actually don't breathe the way that our human
Mhm,
vessel is designed to, and most of it probably is because of that conditioning that we're told. The imprinting age they say is between 0 to 7. So whatever we were
mhm.
told between that time, it's what our DNA believes. So you're right. We were told you can just breathe without thinking about it. But, think about all the times where, something happens and you automatically, you
Mm.
tense up. It's because we're not regulated. So actually introducing the breath can allow somebody just in the moment to be like, okay, let's just take a couple of breaths with our feet to the ground and just ground ourselves. And you'll be able to come at the situation in a far different stance than if your body's sitting in that uncomfortable fight or flight.
Mhm.
So it's just so important in terms of making decisions. Plus, life is busy, right? Everybody, you say, "Hi, how are you?" And they're like, "I'm busy." So, like,
Yes.
literally, we're all living in this busy life. It's moving way faster than it would before with tech and AI. And it allows us to actually stop, the old saying, smell the roses,
Mhm.
actually just enjoy being in the present. And it can just bring you back down to the frequency of where we are now. So you can actually just enjoy what's happening rather than be thinking, oh, I've got to get to this, I've got to get to this, I've got to get to this. And then
Yes.
in a couple of years' time, you're like, well, where do those last few years go? So breath can just slow us down and just allow us to move through things in a more not more sane, but in a more clear and clarified way.
Right. And so do you find then from chatting with your clients and let's say various intake forms that anxiety is pretty high up on the list of things that people might want to change, or they notice that it impacts their success in a negative way?
Yeah, so they don't always associate with that word.
Okay.
However, a lot of the feelings that they say potentially are anxiety. A lot of people try to steer away from like self-diagnosing, or sometimes they're just like, I'm just stuck. I hear that all. I'm
Mhm.
just stuck or I'm just
Ah,
scared.
okay.
Um, Although it plays out in an anxiety way, in an anxious way. And all it is it's just like they don't know how to process the information and it's too much and their body feels unsafe.
Yeah.
So it is a very normal thing when I work with women that are jumping from their 9 to 5 over into becoming an entrepreneur. They're like, I'm just scared, but they're just scared of the unknown. And
Hmm.
then if you've got somebody that's been in business for a while, they're just like, it just feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And, there's lots of things that come up, but generally it's a lack of self-trust, or, there's limiting beliefs creeping back in. They don't feel good enough, or they're like, why would somebody pay this? And that's just conditioning over time. And it's just really kind of spending time on ourselves to be like, no, I am good enough. No, I can
Hmm.
charge this. I can have a thriving business. And it's just about putting themselves up here and holding themselves to a higher standard. And that's really the big difference.
Yes. Wow. Like there's like so much information, and it's delightful because this really does impact this mindset and having to renew our minds and the neuro linguistic programming. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but even knowing that, yes, you should charge at least what everybody else is charging because of the value that you're bringing to the table. And I was many years ago when I was in business for myself, I was meeting with my lawyer. I had an unpleasant client, and they had a lawyer too, so I had to go see him. And so we were just chatting, and then he was asking me a little bit more about what I do, and he wanted to know my rates. He said, "Michael, man, you got to charge at least 25% more. Your rates are way
Mhm.
too low."
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was like, "Well, thank you. And what's the size of your bill gonna be?" But I knew that he was saying that for my benefit, that I wasn't thinking of the value that my customer or client receives from me. And, uh, so not that we don't have to delve deeply into this, but if somebody is self-employed and they're kind of looking at their receipts and they're thinking, I either need more customers or I got to up my price. Well, it's probably both. uh, can you talk a little bit about that, why they need to consider that their prices are actually too low?
Yeah, because when they start business, a lot of times they're comparing their rates with, say, those of an employee,
Mm,
or just from the knowledge that they have. So they don't have enough knowledge of the market, of where they're going to sit. Then it comes to a value perspective. They're like, oh, well, I'm new in business, so I have to price down here. Again, somebody somewhere
mhm.
came up with that rule, but it's not a
Yes.
rule.
No.
It's about valuing yourself and positioning yourself on that. And then it's about how can we charge on the transformation of our clients? And that's the difference. A lot of
Mm,
people are pricing on their time that they're giving away.
yeah.
Whereas you need to price on the transformation, because if you're in a role that, or if you're supporting a business where you're actually going to make them money, or you're going to change their life, actually, that is worth so much more than
Hmm.
you giving that client 10 hours, or if they're working with you for 12 months.
Yes.
And that's where the shift needs to happen.
Love it. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, that's worth the price of admission right there. That's worth combing your hair and getting up in the morning, is just to know we can go from pricing a job as an employee to actually the value that we're going to bring to someone. Business is really about solving problems, providing a service, making someone's life better. And it sounds to me, Sasha, that you're saying that we're actually going to be pricing on the transformation and the value that we bring, because
Correct.
that's actually what our why our clients are coming to us. Correct?
Correct.
Yes. Now, so I I haven't really been following my script except for looking at your coaching kinds, and as they say about people from Holland, wooden head, wooden shoes, wouldn't listen. So we have to um, get. I would like to get back on track, but the
Sure.
majority of me is like, there's no track. It's just whatever. So I wanted to ask you then about the therapeutic and hypnotherapist part of your life. And the reason I
Sure.
want to ask you about this is my wife and I were traveling over the Christmas holidays, and we were listening to this great podcast about this business hypnotherapist. And he was just talking about the success that his clients have had and kind of taking people through the process. It was part of a larger conversation. The reason that I want to ask you about this is some people might be listening and they're thinking, well, I've seen this performed, at an event at a hotel or some other place, and I didn't think that it could actually benefit me because they get a bunch of people up on stage and it. Anyway, so can you just talk about maybe some of the, or what was that? that impetus that really kind of pushed you towards that therapeutic hypnotherapism? That's
Yeah,
not a
it's a
word,
great
but
I know what
sorry.
yeah, I know what you meant. It's a great question. So when I saw it, I thought it was the same. So very much like you experienced the hypnosis on stage, and I was just like, oh, is this real? Is this not? So part of my NLP training was we learned about hypno and the benefits
Okay.
of hypno. Now, when they do it on stage, it is purely for entertainment purposes. Yes, people are hypnotized.
Right.
However, the big power is actually changing people's unconscious. And hypnotherapy does it in a really quick way.
Hmm.
However, the one thing to note is hypnotherapy is actually self hypnosis. So the other person has to allow those suggestions to go into their unconscious. So if you're sitting on stage and you're like, this is fake, this isn't real, I'm not going to listen to this person, then it's not going to work. So
Right.
they have to be taking the words that the hypnotherapist is saying and actually listening to them and trusting in those words.
Hmm.
So I did my hypnotherapy, my therapeutic hypnotherapy certificate with the same trainers as my NLP. And what I learned with that was you can really hone in on one specific issue that's supporting with somebody. And of course, the more you listen to the hypnotherapy, the more that you're retraining your mind essentially. So a
Hmm.
lot of it is self-worth, abundance. I've helped a woman with fertility before.
Wow.
Um, quit smoking is probably the most prominent one that people want to use. So again, they have to be open to it. So if you are doing a quit smoking to somebody that just doesn't actually want to quit, that they love it, they love that habit, it
Yes.
isn't going to work. So somebody has to
Right.
want to change. The way that I use it with my clients is generally if something's coming up for them, it is a really quick effective way for them to really kind of move from this lack mindset to more of an
Hmm.
abundant mindset. So I do an anxiety release one. I've done a wealth creation one. We sometimes have money themes in terms of our months. So it's really what's coming up for that particular
Hmm.
person and using the scripts that we have at our fingertips to sort of support them to retrain their mind.
Wow.
Now, as humans, we can slip back into our old operating system. So that's where a lot of people are like, well, it just didn't work. It's
Hmm.
like you have to want it to work and you
Yes.
have to stick to that because at the end of the day, you're human, you're in control,
Hmm.
and you're responsible for your own results. So we always suggest the more you listen to things over and over again, the more your body and your mind will start to believe it. And that's
Yeah.
where, we talk about, for all of our lives, we might have believed something, but, if we're in our 30s, 40s, or 50s, that's a very long time for us
Yes.
to undo that learning and relearn something. A lot of entrepreneurs, and myself included, a really great way to actually retrain our mind on a longer period of time is to actually do hypnosis right before bed when you're in that sort of beta stage, when you're kind of floating in and out of that
Hmm.
sleep. I think it's Dr. Espen or Dr. DeMartini, one of them that, specializes in that sleep
Yes.
hypnosis. And it's really powerful. So every night before I go to bed, I actually fall asleep to hypnosis so that I can wake up. And if it's
Mm.
there's something that's happened throughout the day, then I might put on a negative energy release. So if you're going to bed feeling, oh, it was a bit of a sticky day, a bit of negativity, you can kind of wake up and shed that energy because you've retrained your mind to believe something
Yeah.
else.
Oh, that is so good. I'm really loving this conversation. And I know if I'm loving it, then the listeners are, and I'm just going to presume that you are as well. But I will prevail upon you for appreciation, maybe. But um, I say that a little bit in jest. But the thoughts that we have as we're drifting off to sleep, I've always tried to be very careful about what I think about as I'm drifting off to sleep.
Mm,
And it's there's doors and there's gateways, and thoughts are so powerful, and sometimes our thoughts, that stinking thinking that you're talking about, we've been programmed, even even, well, I was going to say so many lies, but even the thought of, oh, don't think about your breathing, just let it happen automatically. And and there's so many things, ladies and gentlemen, that we can pick up from Sasha. And while we're in the thick of this conversation, some people might be saying, Michael, I need to know how to get a hold of this lady. So,
mm.
Sasha, can you share your contact information we'll just take a little commercial break for you, if you will.
Sure, no problem. So my website is the main port of call, which is just sashaeburne.com. I'm sure we'll link to it in the show notes. And
Hmm.
even on Instagram, I'm always up for a voice note chat. Drop in, say hi, your biggest takeaway from the podcast. Always love to hear from listeners, which is just Sasha Eburne _ the handle on Instagram.
Good. And ladies and gentlemen, Sasha is very prompt in her communication. I can assure you of that from personal experience. So uh, there's there's just so much already that we've talked about, and l- I do like the idea that you were talking about self-hypnosis, because it's essentially self-hypnosis regardless of if you have a facilitator or you're doing it on your own, correct?
Correct.
Yes. And so it's that willingness to participate and the maybe that faith or expectation that it's actually going to accomplish what the person is hoping to achieve. Um, Now, part of maybe some lies that we've believed, and oftentimes when we get deceived into believing a lie, that might sound like strong language for the people, but that seems to me essentially what it is, calling this spade a spade of when you're deceived, you don't know that you're being deceived because it looks great, and it's not till later that you find out the fruit was bitter, let's just say. um so you had talked about there's different protocols for different um, situations that people might want hypnosis or some coaching for. And as you were talking, we hear a lot of rhetoric on the political side of different modalities of politics are good or bad, and they give us a spectrum. And we could hear that, well, if you can label something, you can control it, right? If you can measure something, you can control it. And so I kind of abhor politics. So I'm not trying to get political in this, but somebody could hear that, oh, being rich is terrible, or having lots of money, those people are, they're bad people. And somebody might say, but I want to be rich, but I also want to be a good person. And how can I be rich and a good person? Or, my poverty is like piety. Because you hear about, like, let's say in the Catholic, I'm not Catholic, and no disparaging meant, but you hear about, let's say, vows of poverty, and that might be a virtue that's extolled as someone's growing up, and they say, no, wait a second, I I don't want poverty in my life. So can you talk a little bit maybe about some of the coaching that you've done where you've had to break down some of these uh, let's say false facades that people think they have
Mm.
to uh, live under?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the first stage is the awareness, and I think until we're made aware that actually all of our beliefs are just things that we've been taught over
Hmm.
time, that actually we get to choose. This is our life and we get to choose. So again, no disparagement to
Hmm.
religion, but religion is
Yes.
very much you go on a weekly basis and you get taught a different thing and you live your life based upon those values. But never at
Yeah.
once did anybody say, well, what do you feel? Do
Yes.
you believe in this? What's your take on it? You're just taught to believe on it. In
Yes.
terms of money, money doesn't
Yep.
grow on trees, or you have to work hard to get money. Whatever, excuse me, whatever you have been told is how you've lived your life. And I think that the biggest thing, once I kind of bring this to everyone's awareness, they're like, oh, what do you mean? I can think and feel about something in a very different way. And it's kind of like there's a light bulb that's cracked in their head because they're like, actually, I am in charge of my own life.
Hmm.
Actually, I'm the only one responsible for changing the trajectory of it. So once they're aware that they can have a different thought or a different feeling, then things do start to change. Now, a lot of times they still go back to that old self. So you've
Yes.
probably heard of self-sabotage.
Yes.
So a lot of times, if you want to talk about in personal relationships, if they've grown up and seen broken down relationships, a lot of times unconsciously that person is going to be getting into relationships that constantly break down. And for them, they're like, well, this is normal because this is just how life is. Actually, it's not. And they can actually
Hmm.
choose to do things distinctly differently. But if they keep on believing, I'm always just going to find the right person, or, nothing will ever happen to me, or you probably hear the people that they're quite cynical is what
Hmm.
we would label it. They'll be like, "Oh, well, of course that happened to me because everything always goes wrong."
Yeah.
They're consciously always creating these roadblocks and these problems based upon their conditioning. So once they
Yeah.
realize that they can make a different choice, every single part of their life becomes a different choice. And that's most of the biggest problem is when it comes down to money. Because they're like,
Hmm.
oh, there's no way I could charge that.
Yeah.
How could I possibly? And then they start feeling that, oh, I feel greedy because maybe they've been told that wanting more out of life is greed. So
Hmm.
it just keeps on playing on those old conditionings. So it's an ongoing thing, and this is why when I work with a lot of women in my mastermind, it has to be 12 months because a lot of times they'll go great for 3 months, and then they'll be like,
Yeah.
"Yes, this is working, I'm doing it," and then they'll be like, "Oh, but this feels a little bit hard, so I'm not gonna do anything for a couple of weeks," and then wonder why clients aren't coming. So,
Hmm.
12 months is a really good time to solidify new beliefs, new learnings, and even holding themselves to a higher standard. It's that growth piece. It's like Rome wasn't built in a day. Again, another
Yeah.
belief that we were
Yes.
installed, but, change takes time. And what I've learned as an entrepreneur and as a coach is even my learning. I'm constantly learning and growing every single day. I do the self-hypnosis. I work with other coaches because the better I can be as a coach and a mentor, the better I can support my team and
Hmm.
my clients. But it's also allowing them to know that, their journey is never finished. They get to
Hmm.
work on themselves every single day. So we start with awareness, then we go into change, and then it's sustainability of that afterwards and keep on
Right.
the repetition so that they're building those new belief systems.
Yes. And well, I love to eat. I mean, who doesn't? And we've got to choose the right things there too. And it would uh, as you're talking, I'm just thinking about let's say the carnivore diet, for example. And ladies and gentlemen, this is not culinary or medical advice whatsoever. But boy, you look at some of those documents online and you think, wow, this sounds like unbelievably impossible. Like chicken skin chips, really? Like, that's what I'm supposed to have for a snack? And so the reason that I bring that up is because if we eat the wrong things and we have a sedentary lifestyle, we're going to run into some health issues because that's not the way that our, in my opinion, body was was meant to be done. And so we can get it's, ladies and gentlemen, we're recording this on January the 5th. So you're hearing it a few weeks later, but just some truth in advertising there. But we we have these New Year's resolutions that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z for the next, or if you're British, X, Y, and Z for the next little while. And we, like you were saying, we start hitting up against some hard things that we have to work through. And sometimes it's just easier to stay home. So I mentioned the carnivore diet, and you make this huge plunge into changing your diet, and you think, what am I going to do with all this food in my pantry and cupboard? And then you just kind of leave it and you don't get rid of it and you come back to it. And the health problems return because you return to your old habits. And uh, I love that you're talking about a 12-month program because if you want lasting change, you mentioned that word sustainability. And how do we sustain? So we've made these drastic changes in our business because we see that we have a pain point that we want solved, or we do want to make more money, or we want to build a legacy for the next few generations. And then we've done the hard work and we come to this sustainability. Are there some tips or maybe some pitfalls that you've found, whether yourself or some clients of, oh, this was a red flag that, the red flag was that we weren't building up the sustainability part to propel us forward.
Yeah. So what I see mostly is everybody wants the magic pill. They
Mm,
want the overnight success. And then when it doesn't happen, then they fall into a heap and say it doesn't work. So the thing with business is business does take time to build. Like anything, you have to put in the reps. If you want the life of freedom, the time freedom, the location freedom, you have to do the things to get there. It's not going to be, oh, I'm going to get X amount of clients today and then I can stop working tomorrow.
right.
And business is a lifelong journey, but it gets to be so rewarding. So I think people
Mm,
want that reward and that instant gratification now, but
yeah.
they're not willing to put in the reps to get there. So what I always say is celebrate every single thing. because then
Mm-hmm.
everything is celebrated. If you get a conversation in a direct message, like whilst it might seem minuscule and they're not paying, that's a success. Somebody is interested in having a chat with you about what you have to offer, and then just layer upon layer upon layer upon it, because eventually it will happen. The more people we speak to, the more calls we have, the more clients that we have. But if we're not doing this over here, we're not going to get over here, because a lot of people are like, I have a website, I have an Instagram. Where's all the customers?
Mm-hmm.
You have to go out and find them. You have
Yeah.
to go out and shout from the rooftops who you are and what you do and how you help people, so that people start to notice you.
Yeah.
If you're not out there, they don't know who you are. So it's
Right.
about putting in the reps, and also knowing that, if you start today, in 12 months' time, you'll be so much further along that you're going to be, rather
Mm-hmm.
than kind of thinking, I need it now or I need it yesterday.
Yes. Right. That chant of what do we want? And they answer, and then you say, when do we want it? Of course we want it right now. Absolutely we do. Like 24 hours. I mean, that seems like enough time for you to get your act together. So uh your business journey was sounded remarkable in my research, that you had some great growth, but that's kind of like maybe a reporter talking to a musician of their overnight success. And the musician says, no, hold on a second. This is like 20 years of playing in the bars, having bottles thrown at me, having a fight while I'm trying to sing this amazing new song that I just wrote, that everybody should be, flicking their lighters and joining me in this amazing opus that I've penned. And it's not an overnight success. It's not necessarily a one hit wonder. Can you talk about when you launched out, and you did go from a few clients to being able to be fully booked and to actually build a team? Can you talk maybe a little bit about that the digging of the foundation and kind of those footings that you had to put in to build on that success that you had?
Yeah. So the biggest thing in the beginning was I was in a bad situation in my 9 to 5. So originally I was a casualty of COVID. I worked in hotels. We were the first hit industry, the biggest hit industry. A lot of all of our international arrivals were housed in hotels. So as soon as they
Mm.
made that decision, we were the first hotel that joined that quarantine program. We were out. So my 25-year career on hold. So then
Wow.
it was a year of in and out of jobs, and I thought I'd try my luck in the real estate industry. And I really just didn't like it, didn't vibe with the people. It wasn't my place. So when I stumbled across this opportunity and I got my first client in 24 hours, only because I just started talking to people. So one week I found that there were 10 leads out there. I applied for all of them. So I put everything out there, and it was just by chance that it was somebody from the same industry as me. They did audio visual. So I talked the talk. I had the same language because I'd come
Mhm.
from the hotel and events industry. So you could say it was luck, but it was also because I put myself out there for everything. And I find in the beginning, people are like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I'm not really sure. Or they're asking for this and I don't know if I can do this. Was I was just more of I'll put my hat in the ring for everything and I'll work it out. So that was essentially the first client. And then what I realized was that there was all these other potential clients. And rather than sitting there thinking, oh, well, I don't have time because I have my 9 to 5, is I was just like, well, do you know what? What if I had all of the rest of the hours of the day? Could I actually make this work? And the thing is, I wanted it so bad. I've always wanted to run my own business. I've been a serial entrepreneur my whole life. I was just like, I really want this and I hate this.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just going to try. What is the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen, I can go back and get another job. So
Right.
because I went all in and I believed in myself, I was just like, well, I have to make this work. And I am a solo mom. I had a mortgage. I had no choice but to put in the reps. So I did. Every single day that my daughter was at daycare, I spoke to people. I was in Facebook groups. I was on Instagram. I was every single place to make sure that I
Right.
had the money coming in, because I couldn't go call my parents and say, "Hey, can you pay my
Hmm.
mortgage for me?" So I
Hmm.
had to do it. So that is probably the catalyst to actually getting fully booked so quickly in 3 weeks, only
Right.
because I put in long hours. I was working until midnight every night, building things, learning things, because the tech as an entrepreneur just way by far outweighs the 9 to
Yeah.
5 tech. So that was all new to me. And then once I'd got to that, I was capped, and I was just like, how do we do this? So I sought advice from people that were in businesses. I'm like, how do I do it? Do I have to have employees? Do I have to have insurance for those employees? Can I have contractors? What are the risks? What are the pros? I probably sat on about 2 months whether or not I was going to grow a team. And of
Hmm.
course, there was the outside voices saying, oh, why don't you just be happy with what you've
Of
got?
course.
And I'm like,
Yes.
but there's only one income coming into my family. I technically need to earn double what everybody
Hmm.
else is. And once I started to work out how to hire a team and how to bring people in, and then I got really great at sales conversations, I was like, oh, let's just keep going.
Hmm.
But that's where the reps come in. And you're right in terms of like it might look like an overnight success, but there were a lot of times where I had clients to be like, this isn't what I want. I'm not happy. I had to learn how to deal with that. Sometimes I said yes to systems that I had no idea how to do. And then I was just like, well, actually, then I had to go and pay an expert top dollar to come in and service a client because I'd agreed to it. So there were lots of mistakes made. There were lots of lessons. It
Hmm.
wasn't just a smooth sailing for the first 6 months. I learned a lot of hard lessons in that time.
Right. And those hard lessons are okay. We've been conditioned to not like pain, not like discomfort, to be patient and to wait, as opposed to I want it now. And the world's favorite radio station is WIIFM. What's in it for me?
Mm,
And so going through these things and understanding that yes, there was a blunder. I know for me personally, I totally identify with what you're saying about I promised something, I had to deliver, and it cost me something. But now I know, and that's okay to have these whether they're client relationships or industry relationships, and we get a little bit knocked around. And it's kind of I had some friends that were really into boxing when I was younger, and uh I would strap on the gloves and do a little bit when I could. It wasn't my thing. One thing I that's because I didn't like getting hit for sure. But when you're a boxer, you learn to put your guard up because if you
mm,
don't, the guy who has more experience than you is, or the gal, how whatever it might be, sees that opening and they go for it. And that's okay because now you won't do that anymore. You won't leave that arm down where it's not supposed to be. So these there's so much value in that adversity and those difficulties. And it's I love that you're being authentic and sharing these things with us because it helps all of us realize that we can get to where we want to be. And so, as we talked about, you got to uh, fill the role of solo mom while building a business. And for all the ladies out there, just remember that necessity is the mother of invention. That mother birthed invention in a way. So, how did you structure your work and those long hours to fit your life rather than the other way around?
So in the beginning, there was no structure at all.
Okay.
It was just whatever I thought, however I felt. And over time, I've learned that there's a lot better ways to work. And I think that came from conditioning, right? So the
Hmm.
conditioning came that I worked while my daughter was at daycare and I worked when she went to sleep. And I just worked the whole time and then I did everything and that was a lot. And what I've learnt is it's okay to ask for help and it's
Hmm.
also okay to outsource in your day-to-day life, not just in your business. So, I
Yeah.
outsource my cleaning, I outsource my laundry as well. So I do get the support so I can actually spend more time with my clients and making money because I can make far more money sitting in my business and working in my business than doing 3-4 hours worth of cleaning and laundry.
Yes.
So that was a big thing for me. And then what I've also worked out is to work when the energy is high. So I've worked out that for the first few hours in the morning is actually my most optimal time. If I try to sit here at my desk for 8 hours a day, it doesn't work for me. And
Mhm.
again, we are so conditioned to just sit here between 9 and 5 and force it and make it work because that's what we did when we were in our jobs.
Yes.
But whereas I structure now my life across 7 days. So I work across 7 days and I work in the times that are optimal and I've just embedded that into our life. So if we do go on holidays, I do work and a lot of people don't understand it. They're like, "Oh, you're working on your holiday." That's just the conditioning. And I'm just like, I get to work on my holidays because I get
Hmm.
to make impact every day and
Yeah.
also I get to afford all of these holidays. And this is a
Yeah.
privilege. And if I work for an hour in the morning and get to be in a beautiful location somewhere in the world, to me, that is the epitome of the
Hmm.
best flexible life. So
That's right.
really tapping into the days, hours of the days that you're at your most optimal rather than falling back into, well, society says I have to be here 9 to 5.
Exactly. And that comes back to that stinking thinking and that um programming. Of course, I worked in television and I would tell whoever listens, it's called TV programming programs for a reason. And so you think of those of us that have gone to school systems of having to have that Pavlovian response to the break bells and to sit at your desk and to be quiet and to do your work, and you might not be feeling it right now, but sucks for you, kid. Just fail your test. Or that was my, that was my experience. So, um, that idea and that mindset of being able to shift to optimal times for certain things and to be able to fit things with ourselves and our makeup and our own personal frequency, as opposed to the programming that prepares us to be a good worker bee in a factory or an office somewhere. So, what a great conversation so far. I do want to ask you about, in your coaching, you've used head and heart. Can you explain this integration and that approach, what it looks like maybe in practice, and how does it differ from other maybe traditional business coaching?
Yeah, so it's really about empowering the women to see a deeper meaning to the work that they do. So if they're doing services or tasks that feel empty, that there's no impact to their clients, I really encourage them to dig deep and find out, well, what would you rather be doing? So a lot of people do come to me for one sort of coaching in terms of, I want this business model. And
Hmm.
through the work that we do, they're like, oh, actually, I don't want to do that. I want to do this. This is the work that lights me up. So I really talk about, okay, yes, we can have all the strategy in the world and we can sell your business, but if your heart is not there and if it doesn't light you up, if it's not aligned, you're not going to have the success in your business because it's going to get to a point where it feels resistance. So,
Hmm.
because that's the journey that I went on. I was really successful in the virtual assistant business. I could have grown that. I could have done that. But to me, there was no further impact for me. It was just like I wanted to do impactful work. And
Yeah.
then stepping 100% into the coaching space, it is so much more impactful and it's so much more in line with heart and with head to be like, no, I'm actually changing these people's lives. And this is the work that I get to do every day. So a lot of times it's like, well, what's the deeper impact to your client? So if they do want to kind of stay, let's say, mainstream rather than, we do
Hmm.
work with a lot of coaches now. If they want to stay more of a service based business, well, what's the deeper impact? Are they an impact led company? What do they do? So sometimes making that impact outside of themselves. And if they're working with, say, a company that, is maybe environmental or something, like, is that aligned for you? Do you care
Hmm.
about the environment? And if they're like, oh, not really. Okay, well, is that meaningful work? Because we really want to find a business and a career that, going back to that sustainability,
Hmm.
is something that's going to serve the test of time, something that they are madly and deeply in love with it, that they can get up every day and grow it, and it feels amazing. Then it goes deeper into the strategy. So if you're selling, how can we sell with heart rather than with head? Because
Hmm.
if we're just constantly sitting in our head being like, this is what I can do, this is what I can do, this rather than actually, I can help transform things and come from the heart, people buy on emotion. So it's really discouraging them from bringing that 9 to 5 mentality where you leave your feelings and emotions at the door, is actually connecting with heart with our clients and building a solid relationship for long term sustainability.
Right. Yes, and boy, in the 9 to 5 realm, and those boardrooms and offices, emotions are not welcomed, and oh, so many other things are on that verboten list of what we can do, but we actually need those because they're part of us, and we have to know how to harness that, yeah, for our benefit. And what a difference. I'm sure that there's somebody who is listening to this and saying, "Oh man, I need to break out of the mold." And I know what I want to do, and I think I know what my passions are. But ladies and gentlemen, as we've been learning, you got to have a coach, somebody that can lead you through what you don't really know. And Sasha, I loved that you were talking about, you did not say this, but I was thinking it as you were saying it, it's okay to let the dishes pile up, but you can actually find somebody to come and do your laundry, to clean your house. And I really appreciate that you pointed that out to people, because there could be some guilt coming in to some ladies, even some men that are listening too, of, oh, convention says that I need to, my programming says that I have to do this. I'm not a good mom if I don't do this, or I'm a terrible dad if I don't do X, Y, and Z. And what it's a relief, ladies and gentlemen, to interact with someone who can point out to you that, you know what, you're far more profitable and a greater blessing to people if you find some virtual or some physical assistants that can take care of some business for you. Now, you mentioned first class freedom, and I think it fits in here really well. I certainly like, that first class section of the airplane. And how do you, now, some people may not want to pay the price for first class freedom, but your business model clearly prioritizes freedom alongside success, which fits with having the someone come in and clean your house and do your laundry and take care of those things for you, provide that service for you in some way. How do you define that first class freedom, and how do you help clients maybe measure whether they're actually achieving it or not?
So, me personally, what I worked out was for me to have first class freedom, it's to have a me first business. And this is what all I encourage all my clients to do. If you could live every day however you choose, what would that look like?
Hmm.
So rather than creating a business to then be like, okay, well, now I just have to work in it because that's what I've created, it's like, do you want to work 1 or 2 hours a day? Okay, great. So that's the goal. Where do you want to be? What freedom location do you want?
Mhm.
Then we craft the business to that. So, whilst it might be a 5 or a 10 year goal, we have to start building the foundations here and implying the strategies so that at some point that's going to be your reality. And
Mhm.
it's really about, well, what does that look like for that person? Because everybody's different. Some people love living in their home and being there all the time. Other people want to be able to world school their kids. So they want to have that
Yeah.
freedom, flexibility. I have some clients who've got goals to travel around. We've got a lot of people traveling around the country in their caravans.
Mm.
I've got some people that want to go to Italy. So we map out what that picture looks like. And until you can actually craft it in your mind, we're never going to be able to create it. So visuals are
Mhm.
great, vision boards, however people want to visualize it. Then we start the business strategy to apply to that. So it's very personalized for every person. But as long as we lead with what's in it for them and a me
Yeah.
first business, then they get to craft it with it, along that. So they might be like, okay, well, in order for you to get to that, you're going to need X amount of employees, you're going to need X amount of clients and X amount of revenue to get there. Then we can even start shaping our offers towards that. So I have a lot of clients who are like, I want this, I want 50K in the bank every single month. But then they're sitting here with offers that are $1,000.
Hmm.
Like, okay, do you want, you need 50 new clients every single month. Is that sustainable? No. So everything is stemmed from that, let's say the rose colored glasses, that utopia that they
Yes.
desire. And then we work backwards.
Yes. Yes. And it's great to lay things out and to kind of backwards engineer what you want. And this is probably maybe it's something that not everybody thinks about, but even if you're looking to do some traveling, like you mentioned Italy, there's not a lot of English speakers in Italy, and being able to get some language lessons in there too, um, makes the transition and the conversation easier when
Absolutely.
you're in those freedom locations, because there's a lot of great spots around. And certainly knowing the language definitely makes it a lot easier. I realize that, there's tech devices now that will do it for us, but boy, there's nothing quite like being able to communicate with someone in their own language when you're entering their environment.
Agree.
And now, speaking of environments, you get to be blessed with living in the location of Queensland. And I may not have said that in the local vernacular, Queensland, but that's okay. You'll have to forgive my North American accent here. But you're working with worldwide clients.
Yes.
What challenges have you faced with this global business model and how have you overcome them?
Yeah, so really I'd probably say two things. Of course, there's the
Okay.
time. So I
Yeah.
do have a client in France and she would need to jump on our calls at 4 a.m. So
Wow.
again, it comes from a commitment thing. She does come quite regularly, which is great. I have some in the US. And because the US is so varied with time slots, it depends upon where they are.
Yes.
But again, it comes from a commitment thing. Currently my business coach, she's in Scotland. So I have to jump on at 10 o'clock at night to jump on a group call with her. So the thing is, I wanted her that much. I don't care what
Hmm.
time of day it is because I'm committed to my growth and my experience. The other thing is sometimes where I do find it challenging, but we do have the resources to find it, is just the legalities. It's just the
Mm.
legalities when people want contract reviews or, maybe advice on an LLC versus a sole trader. It's more about just knowing where I can send them to find the right information because I'm not a legal practitioner. I'm not an
Mhm.
accountant, so I can't give financial advice. So it's more just having the awareness in each country that I do work in of where I can send them to the right resources to get the correct information for their location.
Right. Wow. And so many moving parts and and
Yeah.
things to think about. Um, Another reason why we need a team of people and to develop a team and to um, find the right people. And it doesn't matter how far away or how close they are. We have the technology that can make it work so that we can actually connect with the people that we want to. Now, this entrepreneurial journey that so many of us love can be absolutely emotionally taxing, demanding, and it's great too, but it's kind of there's that yin and yang in it, I suppose, of the delights and the demands of it. Is there a maybe a specific mindset practice that you rely on personally to stay grounded while continuously scaling your work and being who you need to be to your clients?
Yeah, that's probably a couple of things. Breathwork is probably one of the biggest ones. The other one is reflection.
Hmm.
Sometimes when it can feel a lot, I like to reflect on where we've been to be like, actually, we did amazing. Because like a lot of people wrapped up the end of 2025 and they're like, oh,
Mm.
wasn't a great year. It's just like, well, I'd encourage you to find the good in it. Find
Yeah.
all of the things that were amazing and what you did. And then you'd be like, actually, it's great. I
Hmm.
think that's really, really important. And then sometimes let's be honest, there's sometimes really bad days is I just go back to my testimonials, go back to my voice
Yeah.
notes from my clients to just really resonate and just solidify the impact that I'm making. And I'd be like, why am I sitting here feeling like this? It's just a choice. I'm going to choose a different emotion and move forward because the more I sit here in these negative emotions, the less people I'm helping. So there's some,
Right.
three things that I like to do on a daily basis if I need to kind of get me back and moving again.
Right. That's such good information and such a great perspective too, because we can have some crows flying around and trying to peck at our hat or our hair, but we certainly would stop them from building a nest on our shoulder, so to speak. And just the idea, I had a boss that told me I was too much of an optimist. He was a little bit irritated by my sunny disposition, and I was like, "Well, Alan, it's better than the alternative." And he
Mm.
was kind of living the alternative. And I would say for my wife and I here at 5 a.m. podcast, we had a great 2025. And it's a lot of that too is how we choose to look at the last 12 months and our growing opportunities and the relationships that we've built. And it's such a great reminder and way for us to end off our conversation with picking out the positives and focusing on those. It's so important. Like you were talking about the testimonials, being able to go back and read that, let's say the accolades and the praises from people that we've helped, because that's who we're all here for, is the people that we can assist and walk through with life and or with during life. And so as we're wrapping up, just one second here, I'll have to edit that part out. Uh, Sasha, what an illuminating conversation. Thank you so much for editing. For editing. I'll start that over again. Talk about word programming right there. What an illuminating conversation, Sasha. Thank you so much for sharing your journey and your expertise with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a great conversation with you.
Oh, thank you. I loved it. I appreciated it. And ladies and gentlemen, our listeners, thank you so much for being here. Now, there may be some of you who want to learn more about Sasha's programming, her coaching, connecting maybe with her directly. Well, you can do that. Her website is sashaeburne.com. As Sasha mentioned earlier, it'll be in the show notes and we'll put it up on the screen if you're watching. If you're listening, just remember sashaeburne.com. Come back to 5am podcast and we'll have that information for you. Now, if you'd prefer to reach out through social media, all those usual suspects, well, Sasha welcomes direct messages on Instagram at the instagrams.com/ Sasha Eburne __. I think you got 2 underscores there, right, Sasha?
Too.
That's 2.
Yes.
Yes. So, ladies and gentlemen, whether you're starting your entrepreneurial journey, you're looking to elevate your existing business to that next level, well, Sasha's blend of mindset work, strategic business development provides a powerful framework for creating success on your own terms. Sasha, thanks again for being here today. And thank you, listeners, for tuning in to 5am podcast. Remember that sometimes the path to success isn't about following the rules, but it's about creating your own rules. So until next time, please remember to enjoy those sunrises and sunsets and all those beautiful adventures in between. I'm Michael Klassen.